Hello, I'm Mike Conahan, the Managing Director of Commercial Content at News Corp. And welcome to the future of brand content. Our study that Nick Smith, I'm going to introduce in a moment, is going to release the findings of our most recent work with Brand DNA, global consulting firm. Really interesting space for us. In my division, we have agencies Suddenly, Storyation, Medium Rare, Visual Domain, and Roller. Coming from News Corp, we believe that the 18.5 million Australians that we talk to each and every month gives us as good or a deeper understanding of what Australians consume on a daily basis when it comes to content. The data that is spun off from the knowledge that we have of what really engages Australian consumers around their news, around their passions, around what matters most to them, puts us in a unique position, we believe, that to help clients in their own channels. And that's exactly what our agencies, Medium Rare, Storyation, and Suddenly do. We're the leading, market-leading content agency group in Australia, and we work for many blue-chip Australian brands and international companies doing business here in Australia and New Zealand. We did this study 4 years ago, the original brand content work done in Australia, because of the growing power of client-owned channels and the efficacy that brings, the power, the loyalty, but the connection that those brands can drive with their consumers. And we learnt in that original study that the consumers had become very adept when it came to understanding what marketing was and when they were being marketed to. And so it was really important that when you are talking to consumers, you don't waste their time. You provide some value, some utility to the content. We like to say, don't sell, but tell. So help them through their day with content that is not only they are willing to accept because they know they're being marketed to, but if there's a value exchange between client and consumer, they're more than willing to accept it. And then really interestingly, what we found was that in the case of the clients of ours that are doing it really well, their customers began to expect that they would be provided that content. And we do that on a daily basis, as I said, for some of the biggest, best and smartest clients across Australia and New Zealand. Today, we're going to release a new piece of work, and Nick's going to present that to you. The growth of content owned channels of clients is growing exponentially, and the power of that is plain to see. And so more and more clients are leaning into this notion that they too can become a publisher in their own right. They still have the same consideration back at the board table, though, to prove the power of that and the return on investment. And that's to what we're going to talk to today, is proving the true value of clients' own channels, brand content, and then, of course, taking that beyond their own channels and maybe back to News Corp. But also, in a lot of instances, they can monetize their own content and help to pay for their marketing efforts through the future. So it's a really powerful area for News Corp. The three agencies, we've been doing it for the best part of a decade now. We think we know Australians and New Zealanders better than anybody else. So I really commend this piece of research, and I'll ask Nick to come up now and give you the full rundown of what we found across Australia and New Zealand over the last study. Thanks very much. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks, Mike, and welcome everyone to the future of brand content. As Mike, my boss, said, I'm Nick Smith, so I'm the Managing Director of Medium Rare and have been for the last 4 years. Looking around that time when I joined our group of agencies, Suddenly, Storyation and Medium Rare, I had one priority, and that was really to prove the impact of brand content on the lives of everyday Australians. Our clients knew it worked for business, we knew it worked, and they knew it worked to drive product or commercialization. But there wasn't really a robust independent study that saw what branded content was having in terms of an impact on everyday Australians. So we partnered with Crowd DNA, a global cultural insights and strategy agency, and surveyed 1,000 Australians. Now, that study was indeed a turning point, not just for us at Medium Rare and our associated content agencies, but delivered an aha moment to our CMOs and our marketing managers and content managers that we worked with brands to really understand why they were doing content and what was the purpose of it. We had found that branded content had changed that old notion of the purchase funnel, and instead of sitting in the consideration phase where we know it sat very well, content was shaping and accelerating every stage of the consumer journey with a brand. We also saw that brand content was driving an emotional ROI for the brands who were doing it very well, and we work with the best of them. But fast forward to today, and the world has changed significantly again. So we went back to market again with our friends at CrowdDNA to just see how the impact of branded content on everyday Australians had changed. So let's get into that research now and look for the methodology nuts. And I am one. I started in market research. The first part of our research was cultural landscaping. So look, CrowdDNA started looking at the cultural landscape as you do. They employed social listening. They did desk work. And they're really looking for the big forces shaping how people were engaging with content today. So they gave us the why and the what behind, I guess, the shifting nature of branded content consumption. And then once we had found that, we went to the quant stage. So we surveyed 1,001 Australians, and this time across the ditch, 501 New Zealanders. The survey looked at how people engage with brand content, how they perceive it, and what they actually value. We measured the impact on trust, confidence, and purchase decisions, as we did back in 2021. And this time, as well as their openness to AI, and if they could actually spot it, and they can. Now that gave us the how many and the how much, confirming which shifts are widespread and which matters most for brands. Now, as we saw when we presented this research in New Zealand, and I guess for those trained in market research, you probably ask, well, how does or did the consumer know the difference between, I guess, brand content and traditional advertising? Well, in fact, it was our respondents that told us themselves indeed in qualitative stage. They were critically able to analyze marketing messages from brands, and they were the ones that told us that advertising was there to sell them something, but brand content was there to tell them something and drive an emotional connection from their brand of choice. So in the quant stage, we defined just that. And really the different definition of brand content is everything a brand creates to communicate with you outside of traditional advertising. It's the articles, videos, social media posts, podcasts, newsletters, magazines, you name it. How-to guides a brand shares to inform you, entertain you, help you solve a problem, or inspire you. Now look, back in 2021, as you see, our research showed, and very surprisingly, that content had finally earned a seat at the table. Customers were telling us that they saw brand content as trusted, valuable, and premium. Now in 2025, it's not just credible anymore, it's absolutely central. As you can see that more than half of Australians and New Zealanders are consuming brand content more than once a day. In fact, up to multiple times a day. What we also saw, and this is the kicker, 41% of Aussies and 35% of Kiwis saw that brand content from brands that they love were actually were delivering relevant brand content. And that's the key. And that was up from 34% in Australia just a couple of years ago. Now looking at the younger cohorts, and for all those getting into content marketing or owned media networks in some of the big brands in Australia, here, the 18 to 39 demographic is the one to watch. They are the ones that are seeing relevance, personalization, and also trust build by consuming content from brands on a daily basis. So obviously, as this cohort gets older and moves into the older demographics, they're going to be consuming multiple times and driving bigger and deeper connections with your brands through content. So time to get and target that demographic with branded content now, because you'll keep them for life. But let's look at that cultural landscaping point from CrowdDNA, how the landscape has changed in 2025, and I guess what the landscape that we're operating in. So it's well known that navigating consumer wants and needs has become the ultimate arm wrestle for marketers, and I think we feel all of that in the marketing and media industry. On one side, you've got people who want more content. They're consuming it constantly, looking for inspiration, entertainment, and connection. But on the other hand, they're feeling overloaded, overwhelmed, and they're turning out faster than ever. It's a paradox. Consumers, I guess, want more personalization, but then they want more privacy. They're concerned about their privacy, but then they want to give you all their data. It's really a complex scenario. It's challenging, but actually there's a huge opportunity for us as marketers, because as brands resolve this consumer paradox, we're going to win their trust and we're going to get them for lives. So let's look at that deeper. If you look at the consumer today, our research showed that 97% of people now actively seek multiple points of clarity before they make a purchase decision. Now that's almost everyone, 97%. Now think about that. When you're looking for a new product or service yourself, you're talking to friends, you're checking Google reviews, you're comparing sites, you're just not making that choice with an instant sell from a brand. Look, and your customers are doing it the same. They're not short of information, they're actually drowning in it. So what they're looking for is clarity. Now that they want clarity, they're going to give cut through, right? And if you give them more confidence with the clarity of information through brand content, they're going to make the right choice, and hopefully that's with your brand. Now on the other side, we see the marketer's paradox, and this is well documented in the industry. The average person is hit with around 4,000 ads per day, but less than 0.01% of them actually getting cut through. Now that is sobering, I know, and I think System 1 also came out with a study recently that they compared an ad of a cow eating grass, and 50% of people against other ads said they could remember the cow eating grass more than the last ad. So it is definitely sobering, and it's no wonder traditional advertising is struggling. Now it's not that people aren't for ads, they still love a great ad, but they're ruthless about what they give their time to and what brands they're spending their time with, which means we've got to earn attention in new ways, and that's where brand content is really getting the edge. So closing the gap, you've got the consumer paradox and you've got the dilemma of the marketer on the other side. We have to close the gap, and really brand content is the key to that. So 7 in 10 people agree that good brand content helps to simplify their decision-making process. Now that is gold. It's content, not ads. It's the things simplifying decision-making processes, giving people confidence and reducing uncertainty in their consumer journey with a brand. And this is where customer experience and content come together, which we'll show through our insights today. It's not about just showing up in a feed. It's about showing up in a way that helps people, guiding them, and not selling to them. If you can deliver the right kind of experience with the right kind of content at the right moment, you don't just get cut through, you build clarity, you build trust, and you make it easier for people to choose you. So look, back in 2021, when we first did this study, people, when they were talking about brand content, they said, look, it was a bit of a gift. It was almost a refresh kind of a gift from brands in return for their service or their loyalty. And look, that was really the big discovery. Also, we found that the old purchase funnel was dead. Content wasn't just around awareness or consideration. It was really leading to loyalty and also advocacy. It was there every step of the cycle. As I said, the big aha moment for us and our clients. Now in 2025, the game has changed. So content is everywhere. It's no longer rare. And in fact, audiences are sharper, tougher, and more decisive than ever, and more selective too, right? So if content feels like a spin, and like it was a few years ago, trying to struggle or wrestle brand content out of the arms of corporate affairs departments, it was a bit of a sales pitch. But if it is that today, you've lost your consumer. So for that extent, you have to be authentic, and you need real stories, trusted voices, and content that feels human. Like us today, just standing in front of a screen, talking to you one-on-one, your consumer wants you to be as human as they are. Now, the second shift is around depth. So as we saw that consumption of content is going up and up every year, over 54% of Aussies and the same amount of New Zealanders are consuming content multiple times a day. They're not just dipping in for one article or listening to one brand podcast. They're really diving into brand world. So that's just not a single post or an article. So what our consumers are saying, they're looking for a mix, a multi-dimensional conversation from you with branded content. So 64% say they prefer owned media to traditional ads. That's huge for those building owned media networks. And 81% say brand worlds give them confidence when making decisions, the ultimate outcome. And then this third shift, as we saw back in 2021, the world felt more certain, although we had just come through COVID and there was a slipping of trust in, I guess, traditional institutions and media. Today, that's escalated. So with global instability, I guess AI shaping daily life, people want brands to be their friends, to show up honestly, to inspire, and to help solve problems. So if 2021 was about content earning a seat at the table, 2025 is about content proving it deserves to stay there. It has to be real, multi-dimensional, and build genuine trust. Now, look, you've probably heard me in meetings with you, if our clients are online, talk about content ecosystems as it's kind of the way to build, I guess, your content hub or your content program. But the truth is that's kind of, I guess, a legacy statement, because as we've seen, consumers are looking for brand content to be human, authentic, and really real. So we're changing our language. So rather than talk about brand ecosystems, we're now talking about brand worlds. And that's really important because an ecosystem is really kind of a closed, I guess, institution. It's uniform and everything works in the same way, but that's not how people are experiencing and consuming content. A brand world has variety, still with consistency, of course, but it's no matching luggage set. It's showing up in the right place, in the right format, and in the right tone, and still feeling like it's unmistakably your brand. So if you think about a brand world, it's the magazine that inspires, the podcast that explains, I guess the YouTube tutorial that shows you how, or even the TikTok that just makes you laugh and learn at the same time. So each one looks and feels a little bit different as you are on those different channels. When you're on TikTok, you're looking for a laugh. When you're on YouTube, you're really looking to find something out. And together they get, I guess, that combination of a multi-dimensional personality delivered from the one brand is today allowed, and that's what your consumers want you to do. And I guess that's what the shift we're seeing today, and that's what the shift our research shows, that if you create a brand world, you aren't just connecting channels, but environments between customers, and so that will drive customer experiences, and your audiences want to stay longer in your brand world and go deeper within it. So look, moving into the, I guess, the key outtakes from our research today, and to give you some winning, I guess, takeouts as we go along, we're really talking about the 3 C's today. So that's cut through, clarity, and customer experience, as well as some great case studies that show them in action. So cut through is around earning attention, not shouting louder, but delivering something that is genuinely worth engaging with. Clarity is about helping people make decisions with confidence. When you strip away complexity, you build trust. And customer experience is where the both come together. Content should feel like an invitation to play, to explore, to spend time with your brand. Now, when you achieve that, you don't just win attention, you win loyalty. I'm just going to take a sip of water because brand content is a thirsty game. Hang on, guys. But let's move on to cut through, right? So cut through with relevance has never been harder because the mainstream no longer exists. Once, broadcast and linear media meant you could get a big message out with one reach. Now that world has gone. Today we're living in the world of our own algorithms, our own choices, our own curations, our own love of a particular podcast, or our own love of a niche magazine. And then we also expect AI to give us everything in a personalized way in a matter of seconds. So it's no longer about one size fitting all. It's about me, and me, and me. So that means cut through becomes, I guess, not just about blasting the market. It comes from relevance. So you being more relevant to your consumer through brand content will give them something that they feel is personal and useful. or inspiring in some ways, or educational. And with that, you're going to be able to give them an invitation to bring them into your world. So key to winning audiences or delivering cut through, and this is where we've seen the shift most obvious in the last 4 years. So brand content, if you look at it as it's stacked up against traditional advertising, and again, we're not knocking advertising, both together are very powerful actually mediums to reach a consumer. But brand content is described as exciting, helpful, entertaining. In fact, 67% of people say it tells them something new. On the other hand, when people describe advertising, unfortunately, the words that come up most are annoying, boring, and forgettable. 71% of consumers say advertising feels like you're just trying to sell them something. And that's what consumers told us. Tell us something, don't sell us something. So it's not just about being present, it's about showing up in the ways that consumers actually value. That's the difference. Ads demand attention, content earns it. And what we're seeing, again, between the difference between advertising and brand content is that brand content, time and time again, is delivering a true value exchange with consumers. And brand content is actually twice as likely to create a real sense of value for people. It feels relatable, helpful, inspiring, and not intrusive. And that matters because people are making active choices about what they engage with. They're not sitting back, waiting to be told to. They're curating their feeds, selecting what they want, and deciding who they let in. When content delivers genuine value, it's not just tolerated, it's welcomed. And this is something I've been talking to clients very recently about in the age of, I guess, digital consumption, when particularly that younger generation doesn't want to go in store to talk to a store assistant, but probably not going to talk a hotline to find out something about your brand or service. Content has become a key to customer service in the digital age. In fact, 60% of people say content removes the guesswork, making it easier to decide what to buy and what to do. 1 in 3 say they prefer content that helps them solve problems. And here's a big one, 77% say content has saved them from contacting a brand directly. So that's extraordinary. Instead of clogging call centers, content empowers people to self-serve with your brand or service. It creates smarter experiences and reduces friction in the consumer journey. And obviously in the world of owned media and retail media, people talk about, I guess, that seamless experience. I guess with content, we're leaning into those moments of friction in that customer journey and intersecting, I guess, that consumer journey where the consumers are in the environment they're in with useful content where they can actually sort of accelerate their decision-making process because of the value of that content. So here we're seeing content really, I guess, working in double duty. So it's delivering engagement, but also saving costs at the same time by delivering customer service. We've also seen that content builds preference and confidence. So 64% of consumers say they actively engage with owned media and prefer it to traditional advertising. Now that's not tolerance, that's preference. And even more importantly, 81% say content makes them more confident in their purchase decisions. And look, confidence is everything. Confident consumers move faster through your ecosystem and more decisively, and then they're also going to stay longer with you, so driving loyalty. Now that's the foundation we take into the next section, but let's take a break and look at a great example of cut through in action. So Flybuys is a great client of theirs. They've got 10 million people in their loyalty program, but only 8 million people are actually using it. So they might download the app, put it on their phone, and then do nothing more. So again, in the cost of living crisis, really, that's a lot of value left on the table for a lot of Australians. So we worked together with Flybuys to come up with the 1-800 Full Flybuys social series. Now that really took, I guess, an entertaining lens, and obviously on a platform such as social on TikTok and Instagram was really about connecting in an authentic, humorous and entertaining way. We brought in comedian Matt Hay, who you see on the screen here, and also we brought in super users from the Flybuys loyalty database who were very happy to give us their own hacks on how to get around the system and consume more points and get more value out of it. The results, and this is incredible, the results over 6 episodes 2.7 million Australians viewed the episodes with engagement well above benchmarks. More importantly, it shifted behavior. And if you can get content to shift behavior, you've done the job. So app downloads went up 4%, engagement lifted another 4%, and the number of fully engaged members increased by 26% over that campaign period. Now, look, that is a really sensational result for a campaign led by content, but obviously overlaid by humour, but underneath that was giving real advice to Australian consumers. And to that extent, if you can actually provide something that's entertaining and useful, you're not just going to get attention, you're going to change behaviour. So on to clarity. So clarity, if you've got cut through, you're moving on to clarity, and that's the threshold every brand needs to move from marketing to building trust. So people don't just want information from you, they want you to help make their life decisions simpler, and that's obviously through great content provided on your digital hubs, on your social channels, in print, or wherever you're delivering it, perhaps in store. So that is a great way to build trust. That is the messy middle we're talking about. If you've got cut through, so you're reaching a brand in a way that they want to interact with you, but then you're giving them the right decision-making information to help them go into purchase or loyalty or advocacy, you're really on the right track, and you'll be going to the third C of customer experience. So really what clarity does, it really elevates your brand perception. It shows you up first as confidence, and then as trust, then as a lift in how people feel about your brand. As I mentioned, 81% of consumers say brand content makes them more confident in their purchase decision. So confidence at the moment that matters most. 4 in 5 agree brand content increases trust. Now, trust is that bridge from being a marketer to being an ongoing relationship builder. And then 79% feel more positive towards brands that provide valuable content. Now, that means that positivity compounds in this scenario. It makes people feel like your brand is more likable, more helpful, more respectable, and then really, I guess, more recommended as well. So the sequence is clear. You can actually build trust, reputation, and credibility, providing ongoing and credible content through your ecosystem. Also, it speeds up that decision-making process. So obviously you've got content available when your consumer wants it on any channel, when they're making decision to find out about your product or service. And the stats back it up, that 3 in 5 consumers say that brand content plays an important role in the final purchase decision. So again, that's direct influence at the moments that matters. 72% say it's motivated them to actually buy or purchase a product after reading content directly related to their brand or service, which is 41% above what we saw in our last survey. So it's driving direct results. And obviously, as we mentioned before, it's also taking out post-purchase dissonance of connecting with your service or buying your brand. So really, again, on top of content driving perception, trust, and credibility, with that, it's speeding up the decision-making process for your consumers, and they're actually going to make that decision quicker, and you're going to be sort of fending off, I guess, the competition in that consideration phase. So back to another spotlight. Here's one that's been in the media a lot over the last 6 months, obviously touted by Jo Boundy, the CMO of Commonwealth Bank herself, out in market. Commonwealth Bank came to us at a time when, Australians were really hurting through the cost of living crisis. And while, they were doing well, consumers were kind of, pushing back against large institutions and really wanting more help through that cost of living crisis. And we're looking to institutions to really provide, the ways and means of doing that. So, in a world of record inflation, interest rates rising and that cost of living crisis, as I mentioned, CommBank wanted to really do something authentic and deliver back to their consumers with really inspirational, relevant, clear and practical content on well-being and financial advice. And so our solution was firstly the Brighter magazine, as you can see in the corner. We delivered that to over 700 branches across Australia. That was a really beautiful moment. We saw NPS raise in branches. Also, we saw people at the front line talking to consumers rather about interest rates or ATM fees. They were taking photos of them in queue with the magazine, and that sort of spread up through, the intranet, and people started to ask, what was this brighter content? It was creating such positive movement within the bank. We extended that to social and video, and I think when it got to, I guess, the notoriety around the bank, people within the bank saying, how do we take this to more Australians? So we moved that into an 8-part series aired on Paramount, which is really about helping people through that cost of living crisis with that incredible content that was founded once in the magazine. Now that's been touted a lot in some of the trade media, but Jo Bounty herself has attributed part of the content marketing effort in really leading her brand value to increase by 44% over the last couple of years. So 10 million people saw the content from Brighter. It really drove, I guess, consideration and action towards products for the bank. And it's been a knockout success. And we've just finished airing the second series on the Network 10 just the other Friday. So let's moving on to our third C, so customer experience. We're really nearly there, guys. You can go and have a cup of tea soon. So when content is done very well, you're providing cut through, you're getting that clarity, it's speeding up trust and making decisions quicker. You're then really actually, moving into customer experience. So it doesn't just stop at the consumer purchase cycle or giving people, I guess, a reason to choose your brand. You're creating an experience if content is delivered every part of the customer journey. So we can really see that content, when it's done well across the whole content or consumer journey with your brand, it's really going to drive engagement at scale. And here it is on the next slide. It's really about influence. So 4 in 5 consumers tell us they see content as a way to stay connected with brands. That's wider access, people actively choosing to stay in touch. And then 68% say content helps them discover new products and services. So that's discovery, content guiding them on actually what is new in the world. So that's really something surprising from content based on our last survey, that actually the awareness factor of people finding out about brands and services through content is really going through the roof. So when you put those all together, you've got engagement at scale. So 54% are engaging with brand content multiple times a day, 1 and upwards. So that's not really just passive exposure or I guess background noise. It's active participation in your brand world, as we discussed, because people are coming back time and time again to get your content and to also make their life easier when they're in your brand world experience. And then to back that up, really, I guess to Mike's point at the beginning of this presentation, it's really about how you're talking to your consumers. So when they're in your brand world and really driving a close experience through the engagement with brand content, they don't want to be treated like a customer. They want to be treated as a human being. So 83% agree content makes them feel more relevant to a brand and its desires. Now that's personal relevance. 58% say content makes them feel connected to a brand, compared to just 30% for ads. Sorry, ads. That's the difference between transaction and a relationship. And 68% strongly agree inspirational content is highly valuable. That's about sparking ideas and creativity people didn't even know they had. So if you're providing great information as well as inspiration, you're really doing something special in terms of customer experience. So let's really look at, I guess, the next slide, which gives us another look at how, I guess, cut through clarity and then also customer experience is acting out in the membership world. So Chartered Accountants Australia is a brand that we work with. And really, this is an instance of how they treated their members as customers, not just members with a membership card or have paid their dues for the year, but actually about an audience and how do they actually meet that audience where they are. So we've worked with Chartered Accountants ANZ for a long time, and I guess the traditional way that they were speaking to their membership was by a bi-monthly magazine called Acuity. Great magazine, but actually in this day and age, their members were everywhere. They're on LinkedIn, they're on social, they're on digital. So they came to us to say, how do we actually revitalize in 2024 to 2025, I guess, our Acuity membership content program. So what our team did was really quite sensational. So it started with content strategy, finding that audience or their customer where they were on a channel at the time they were there and what they wanted on those channels. So really how we're expanding or really elevating the customer experience with Chartered Accountants through their incredible content. So that was really a pretty significant change. So we actually reduced the number of magazines and really scaled up the digital content across a lot of channels. Now the results were pretty sensational. So the magazine, as I guess is an anchor of that content or brand world, still stays true and is almost more loved than ever. But what we saw is increased engagement, particularly on its digital hub. So the engagement there and also the traffic is well above benchmarks. The EDMs now drive half of all the traffic to the Acuity content. So email is still a very powerful medium. And then we also did really, I guess, member considerate, execution. So Acuity on Air is our audio articles for the time poor, chartered accountant, which they can listen to on the run or in the office or during audit. And what we saw, those articles have an actual 85% completion rate. So the proof is there actually, even with the member or organizational environment. If you're treating your members like customers, you're really driving an experience, and often brand content is the way to do it. So look, that brings us to our last slide. And I guess back in 2021, this is the first time we saw that brand content was really having a strong play all the way through, that consumer purchase funnel, which was no longer, because we actually changed that into the consumer content cycle with content and the consumer right at the middle. And you see the stats all the way from awareness through to advocacy. In 2021, they were huge. These are the numbers from 2025, and each of these metrics have jumped up around 10 to 15%. For those CMOs out there, or those marketing managers or content managers, take a screenshot of this screen or contact us later, because I guess this is really the aha moment. When you're creating, a brand world that is bringing your consumers in through awareness and then locking them in through great content and providing a great customer experience, you're going to create a moat that your competitors really can't pass. So really finishing on today, and thank you for your time. 3 key takeouts. Obviously, it's the 3 C's. So firstly, you're going to provide cut through to your consumer by providing great, often entertaining or inspirational content. You're going to provide clarity. So you're there at the right time, providing the right information that's credible, trustworthy, and gets them to make decisions. You're going to accelerate the consumer decision purchase cycle. And then obviously, if you're doing it time and time again, and you're doing it very well, you're going to create a brand world or a customer experience that your consumers will come back to time and time again. So there it is, guys. The keys to growth in 2025. Thank you for your time. We're going to leave you with the QR code, the medium rare, biggest QR code you've ever seen in your life. Put your phones to the screens. If you take a screenshot of that, you'll link through to our newsletter where you can get all the key takeouts. We can give you more information from this research study, follow up with our team, or you'll hear from us on a monthly basis through our newsletters of what's going on in the world of brand content. So on behalf of myself, our sister agencies, Suddenly and Storiation, and also our parent, News Corp Australia, thank you for your time.